Welcome to the What You Should Know About the Americans with Disabilities Act and Service Animals video. This video was produced by the California Department of Social Services Accessibility Policy Unit and is part of our Disability 101 learning series. During this video we will review the topic of service animals under the ADA and discuss how this topic is applicable to your job within the Department of Social Services. This information will be especially helpful to 1. Department staff who interact with the public and/or host public events or meetings, and 2. Those who have coworkers using service animals or emotional support animals. To help clarify the confusion over service animals, on September 15, 2010, the Department of Justice published revised final regulations implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) for Title II state and local government services, as well as Title III entities that include places of public accommodation such as grocery stores, bowling alleys, and other for-profit commercial facilities. 6 months later, on March 15, 2011, these regulations took effect. Under these new regulations, only dogs are recognized as service animals under Titles II and III of the ADA, with one exception which we will discuss later in the video. Because this is a complex area of the law, let's take a closer look at how service animals are defined. Under the new ADA definition, a service animal is a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for a person with a disability. Although emotional support and therapy animals provide a valuable service, they do not meet the revised definition. Service animals are working animals, not pets. Dogs or other animals whose sole function is to provide comfort or emotional support are not considered service animals under the ADA, but may meet the broader definition of assistance animals. For detailed information regarding the key differences between the ADA and state laws applicable to different types of service animals, visit the California Department of Rehabilitation's website at https://www.tor.ca.gov/home/serviceanimals. Under the revised regulations, government entities like the Department of Social Services must permit service animals to accompany people with disabilities in all areas where members of the public are allowed to go. The ADA regulations define a service animal as a dog that has been trained to perform a specialized tasks that their owner is either incapable of doing or would have a very hard time doing for themselves. There is no exhaustive list of all possible applications for service animals, but here are some of the most common ways in which service animals help improve the lives of their handlers. We usually associate service animals most often as being paired with individuals who are blind or visually impaired. A guide dog often accompanies his owner wearing a U-shaped harness, which allows the human to control the animal by using a series of directional commands. Guide dogs are trained to identify and avoid potential obstacles both inside and outside of the home, including city sidewalks, public transportation and stores, to make daily tasks easier for their handlers. For people with hearing loss or deafness, service animals assist by alerting their human to noises such as alarms, doorbells, or crying babies. When the animal hears the sound, they'll touch their humans and lead them to the noise. Animals trained for aiding those with deafness or hearing loss can also alert their owner if a fire alarm is going off or when traffic is approaching. For individuals with diabetes, trained service dogs can provide security by alerting the person to chemical changes in their blood sugar before the levels become dangerous. This provides those with diabetes an early warning system to alert them in times when they may need to take an insulin shot or seek out some sort of food or drink. Service animals trained to provide aid to those with diabetes can make living with diabetes less worrisome by providing the comfort of knowing they have an animal looking out for them at all times. In addition, these animals can also be trained to draw attention to their owners if the human becomes incapacitated or unable to speak. In times of need, service animals can help save lives and make deadly diseases like diabetes easier to manage. Some foods, especially those prepared at office potlucks, may contain ingredients which are not readily apparent. Whether the food was unknowingly cooked with peanut oil or contain other allergens. Service animals can be trained to sniff out specific scents and can alert their owners if something dangerous is contained within something they are about to ingest. This ability can be life-saving for individuals with life-threatening food allergies. Service animals are also used by individuals living with psychiatric conditions such as depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. PTSD can occur after individuals have, for example, served in combat, worked as a first responder, experienced abuse or natural disasters, or have lived through an act of terrorism, and other life-altering events. Aside from PTSD, psychiatric support animals can also aid those who live with obsessive-compulsive disorders or other mental health-related disabilities. In the case of OCD, service animals are trained to be keenly aware of their handler and will help dissuade them from behaviors that may distract them from important work and life activities, or may cause self-harm like picking at one's skin until bleeding occurs. For individuals with mobility-related disabilities, including those who have difficulty walking or people who use wheelchairs, can benefit from service animals. These types of service animals can bring objects to people, press buttons on automatic doors, serve as a brace for people who are unsteady, or even help pull a wheelchair up a ramp. The specific tasks that service animals can be trained for varies and is based on the needs of the person for whom the service animal is intended. But did you know that service animals can also benefit individuals on the autism spectrum? Autism can cause various social and sensory difficulties, and service animals can help increase a person's safety. This type of service animal can also be trained to keep children from running away and can often track the children if they do run off. The most important criteria to remember is that under the ADA, the service animal must be a dog and must be trained, with only one exception. Can you guess the other animal recognized as a service animal? If you guessed a miniature horse, you are correct. The ADA regulations have a separate provision for miniature horses that have been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. The use of a trained miniature horse is quite rare compared to the use of trained dogs. But why miniature horses and not dogs? Miniature horses are very easy to groom and don't shed or trigger allergies like dogs often do. There are several perceived advantages to using a horse rather than a dog. Miniature horses, with an average lifespan of 30 years, live much longer than dogs, and for those frightened of dogs, a horse could make a good alternative. Miniature horses generally range in height from 24 inches to 34 inches measured to the shoulders and generally weigh between 70 and 100 pounds. Entities covered by the ADA must modify their policies to permit miniature horses where reasonable. The regulations set out 4 assessment factors to assist entities in determining whether miniature horses can be accommodated in their facility. The assessment factors are: 1. Whether the miniature horse is housebroken. 2. Whether the miniature horse is under the owner's control. 3. Whether the facility can accommodate the miniature horse's size and weight. And finally, 4. Whether the miniature horse's presence will compromise legitimate safety requirements necessary for the current and ongoing safe operation of the facility. Under the ADA, service animals must always be harnessed, leashed, or tethered unless the individual's disability prevents using these control devices or these devices themselves interfere with the service animal's safe, effective performance of tasks. In that case, the individual must maintain control of the animal through voice, signal, or other effective controls. Contrary to urban myths, the ADA does not place any restrictions on the breed of service dogs that qualify as service animals as long as they have been trained. The dogs do not have to wear a designated jacket, but many do. When it is not obvious what service an animal provides, the ADA limits the inquiries permitted. Staff may only ask these 2 questions: 1. Is this a service animal required because of a disability? And 2. What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? When asking specifically about a service animal, the ADA prohibits additional questions about the person's disability. DSS staff members cannot require the person to provide medical information or documentation about their medical condition. Likewise, they cannot require a special identification card or training documentation for the service animal they are using. Now that you've learned the basics, It's time to check how well you understand this topic by answering some of the most frequently asked questions regarding service animals and the ADA. Are you ready? You will only need to provide a verbal response. Now let's get started. Question number 1. True or false? Emotional support, therapy, comfort, and companion animals are considered service animals under the ADA. You will have 5 seconds to choose your answer. The correct answer is false. Emotional support and therapy animals are not considered service animals because they have not been trained to perform a specific job or task. As such, they do not qualify as service animals under the ADA. Question number 2. True or false? Under the ADA, service animals must be professionally trained and must wear a vest at all times. You will have 5 seconds to choose your answer. The answer is false. People with disabilities have the right to train the dog themselves and are not required to use a professional dog training program. The ADA does not require, let me repeat this, the ADA does not require a service animal to be trained professionally, nor must the service animals be required to wear vest, although many do. Unfortunately, there are individuals and organizations that fraudulently sell service animal certificates and vests online indicating the dog is a service animal. The US DOJ does not recognize them as proof that the dog or miniature horse is a trained animal. Question number 3. True or false? Covered entities, such as the state of California, are permitted to ask the individual detailed medical questions to verify the person's medical condition and can demand proof to determine if a dog is a service animal. The correct answer is false. Staff are not allowed to inquire about the nature of the person's disability, nor should they request any documentation for the dog, or require that the dog demonstrate this task. In situations where it is not obvious that the dog is a service animal, staff may ask only 2 specific questions. 1. Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And 2. What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? Question number 4. True or false? Under the ADA, only certain breeds of dogs are allowed as service animals. For example, Labradors, Collies, German Shepherds, etc., but not pit bulls. Think quickly, only 5 more seconds to decide. The correct answer is false. The ADA does not restrict the type of dog breeds that can be service animals. If you answered this question incorrectly, you are like many others may have heard the wrong information. Now your final question. Question number 5. Under the ADA, service animals must be under the control of the handler at all times? Your 5 seconds will start now. The correct answer is true. The service animal must be harnessed, leashed, or tethered while in public places unless these devices interfere with the service animal's work or the person's disability prevents the use of these devices. In these situations, the person must use voice, signal, or other effective means to maintain control of the animal. For example, a person who uses a wheelchair may use a long retractable leash to allow her service animal to pick up or retrieve items. With limited exception, an individual with a disability may not allow the dog to wander away and must maintain control of the dog, even if it is retrieving an item at a short distance away from the handler. As an example, if a returning veteran with PTSD has difficulty entering unfamiliar spaces, the dog is permitted to enter a space to determine no threats are present and then come back and signal to the owner that it is safe to enter. In this case, the service animal must be off-leash to do its job, but must be leashed at other times. Under control means that a service animal should not be allowed to bark or misbehave repeatedly. However, if a dog barks just once, or barks because someone has provoked it, this would not mean that the dog is out of control. This concludes the video on service animals. We learned that service animals are used by individuals with a wide variety of disabilities, including individuals with visual impairments, hearing loss, orthopedic conditions, as well as individuals with psychiatric conditions and seizure disorders. Sometimes the need for the service animals is obvious, but in many cases the need is not readily apparent. Use the information learned from this video to guide your actions. For more information about this topic, or any of the topics in our Disability 101 series, contact the Accessibility and Policy Unit at accessibilitypolicyunit@dss.ca.gov.